Al DeGenova, my co-host. We're live. Did you know
Hello,
that?
Nina Corwin. Here we are, traveling Mollies once again, and live streaming on YouTube. So hello to everyone who's out there in YouTube land. And we're ready to go. Another traveling Mollies. It's almost 2 years virtual now. So it's getting to kind of be old hat, I think.
Yeah, we keep talking about old. Tonight, with the help of being virtual, we have East Coast and West Coast features. We have Patricia Spears-Jones in Brooklyn and Luis Rodriguez in LA usually, but tonight he's in Irvine. And then there's the rest of us in the middle, although Robbie, you're out there too. So what do you know, Al?
What do I know? I know that it's been a busy after hours season for me. So we've got a new issue and working on a new anthology with the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame. So it's going to be interesting next couple months.
Yeah. And for me, going out to San Miguel de Allende. So if technology blesses us, then I will be here in March, but I will be there. And next month, just for the heck of it, we have Cyrus Cassels and Virginia Conscian, who wasn't able to be here a couple months ago because of COVID. So you're going to definitely want to come back then.
So we, as we always say, Nina and I usually start things off so nobody has to go first. And I will be posting to all our friends out in YouTube land a link for donations for our features. When we used to do this in the real world, we would pass a hat. We can't do that virtually, so we do have a donation link, and we'll call your attention to that later. But for now, let's hear some poetry.
All right. This one's called Swarm, and it'll be my nod to Valentine's Day and my husband. I had him by the scruff, big sisters. The way you taught me, my mouth surrounding him, lifting his wings from somewhere beat in our ears. I swear he was with me. We wrangled, the throbbing between us erupted in waves, breaking open embankments, that straining and suddenly sun coming so near, its many explosions licked the spattered drop cloth of sky. I could almost see auras of something the ancestors spoke of. Yes, seizures of asteroids thralled against dark in a moment. I opened my mouth in awe as a flash hurtled toward me and shattered in petals and potsherds and onslaught until I could see once again, and I saw I had lost him. I tell you, I couldn't help thunder and rose milk, a clutch and then slackening sunspots. I think you once called those explosions a warning, big sisters. I must have forgotten. I felt him convulsing, then nothing. And then he was falling below me, the clouds squalling, rushing in swarms of them, nearer than further, the howl and the bellows below me. He fell, and I must have blacked out. I don't know how the next thing I knew, I was falling beside him again, and then meteors screaming and grasping through darkness and blinded with smoke, as in wind warp, the pitch of our fall as we tumbled together, descent without sound, as in tremble and shimmer through torrent and storm.
Very nice, Nina.
Happy Valentine's Day. So, Al, what do you have for us?
Well, this is not necessarily a love poem, but there's love in it. But it's fairly new, and it kind of tells you when it was written. This poem is called It's Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving again. The floors are swept, the table set. My mother's ashes rest on my bookshelf surrounded by poetry. This was her holiday, preparing for the crowd of cousins, nieces, and nephews. Now it is our turn to roast the turkey, make the sweet potatoes. I start this day early with coffee and Kerouac, rereading, see the 1956 world unchanged, angels rioting in the streets as my sons feel their world today on a brittle crust of hate and sadness. Jack sad with his eggs and toast, knowing we're all gonna die, and that's okay. Living is every day. We only die once. I am grateful in that knowing and thankful for this day, with a nod to my mother's recipes, her turkey stuffing. When my time arrives, I ask for my ashes to be surrounded by books, everlasting, and a small taste of bourbon. Last night, we watched an old video, my wife singing, 27 and pregnant, so many every days, and this Thanksgiving. Thank you, thank you. I see all the hands clapping. Thank you very much. Well, with that, we will start the open mic. And geez, I don't know who to ask to read first. I don't know. Mary Howley, would you be our first reader tonight?
Sure. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Well, I'm going to do two poems, and the first one is from the book, my collection of poetry, Double Tongues, which, believe it or not, 30 years ago was when Luis Rodriguez told me that Tiachucha Press was accepting this book for publication, this manuscript, which I am so grateful for to this day. So I'm going to read a poem about love gone wrong in this book, and then love done right in another poem after that. So this one is called Bogota 2. We were decaying at the same rate as the city at any moment could collapse like a bad vein. At the restaurant, we ordered expensively, chewing as if it answered a question. After making love, he pushed a dresser against the door, thinking of thieves. I thought of fire and opened the windows to the shine of black rain, the whistle of mountain air between us. We drank to our unborn children. That night, the M19 released a hostage, pregnant with the child of her captor. Her face was thick and flushed with his little bomb. Captivity breeds a need for the warm arms of your hostage, your lover. Under the city, the earth begins to move. And thank you. And then this one is just called Valentine's Day for this guy I know. No man is an island, but if you were, I'd be a green wave foaming over the beach, stealing sand on the long pull out, then rolling in again to see if you minded losing ground to a moony wave. Hola, mi hola, you could say, so flowingly, in the way that Via del Corazón is liquid on the tongue, while Day of the Heart clunks like a Hallmark movie stuffed in a bin on a long aisle of cards and chocolates, corny as the moon or cats. As it happens, there's a cat on my lap. Sometimes you write about hearts, which takes courage because it can go so badly, the words, the hearts, yet we persist in our foolish work, corazón. Curaçao is an island named either for healing or the heart, or both, mi valentía, my courage, mi isla. Thanks.
Well, that was a great way to get us started, Mary. Next up, how about Leonard Ludd? Are you ready for us?
Of
Leonard.
course, of course. A few things from the 2016 book, Hitchhikers in Mississippi. Burying the TBF gunner, 5 November 1944. A 40 millimeter round exploded above us. I don't know how Dunzik and I weren't hit. You can see where the flak tore into the wings on either side of us and all the way back to the elevators and rudder. The folks at Grumman built her rugged. Even with all the damage, she flew right and brought us home. Landing was as routine as any carrier trap can be. It's a shame she'll never fly again. And it's a shame about Lois. I'm surprised the corpsman found his dog tags and enough to fingerprint. He was a 4-0 sailor, as good as they get. Cared about the young guys, the kids. They're pushing them over the fantail now. Watch her flip. All those holes and she still takes her time sinking. It's a fitting burial for a sailor. The water below us will keep him safer than the air ever could. U equals time machine. It's as though you were a time traveler, showing up in my life unexpectedly and then leaving again and again. The cat in the photograph is dead now, as are the flowers in the vase, the bird in the tree outside the window. It's not that I want them to be absent or that they did. They had no say in the matter, no more than I might, stranded here forever. The picture is as old as my memories of times, so they and I have no hope for resurrection, unless, of course, you bring them back with you. Gaining entrance to the past. I read your scars in the darkness left when you closed the curtains. They present themselves as hieroglyphs beneath the fingers of a seeker after hidden truth and treasure. There is no special stone to aid me, and my own marked skin provides only the scantest reference. Teach me the things they speak of. Make me privy to your singular society. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. Thank you. One of our staunch regulars. We appreciate you being here. Who should be next? Deborah Edelman, are you ready? You have to
Soon as I unmute. Yeah.
There you are.
Oh man, I've been teaching in Zoom for 2 years. I do know how to do that, I swear. Okay. Thanks for having me here. What a pleasure to be amongst all of you guys. I'm going to read 2 poems. This one is called Hospice. Elizabeth says he should lay flat. He'll be more comfortable. Sandra says prop him up. It will help clear the congestion. The other Elizabeth tells me to let him know it is okay to go now, that I will be fine. Sandra says, don't tell him it is okay to go. Just tell him you accept it. Stephanie sends me out to buy chocolate ice cream. Catherine won't give him a bite or sip of anything. She doesn't want him to choke. No one knows how to help the dying depart. Surely not I, who was so certain that if the house smelled strongly of brisket, fatty beef simmered in onion and tomato for hours, I might convince him to eat, stay longer, come back to life. Laura comes, stethoscope around her neck. She smells the food, knows my type, is on to me. Deborah, she says, your father is dying. And my second poem is called Rebound. And I will say, my honey and I celebrate Valentine's Day tomorrow for reasons known only to the 2 of us. So This is the poem about a past love, which I'm glad lives on only on paper. Rebound. What I loved was that you had a front 40 and a back 40 too, that you said I belonged on your land, that I belonged in your bed, that you were happy making the bed together after we had lain in it. What I loved was all that quiet, though sometimes I could hear the cows bellowing across the road, the buzzing of daredevil crop dusters flying crazy loops over the fields, showering poison, the naked snow angels in the backyard, and the hot tub afterwards, the Japanese lilac blossoming in your front yard. What I loved was I loving in the hot tub on the porch overlooking the yard and the Japanese lilac. I loved that you didn't argue, that we did not have children together, that I only saw you for a few days every few weeks. What I loved was the way you savored my arrival, the way you slowly emerged from your house to greet me and take my suitcase, that moment of hesitation before you appeared in the driveway that told me you couldn't believe your good fortune that I had decided to return. What I loved was the milkweed field all gone to seed in the back 40 at the end of summer, the shriveled pods like dried up canaries spilling their guts to the wind, that you loved the lupin, that the Carner Blues fed on the lupin. What I loved was that the Carner Blues overwinter in Wisconsin, that you lived in Wisconsin, being with you in Wisconsin, riding behind you on your Buell to Rudolph. What I loved was the wind in my face, the 2-lane roads, our balancing together, my arms around your waist, the way you walked, your back straight, purposeful, your startling blue eyes. What I loved was picking apples from your tree, the snowshoes, the wood stove, the garden, the spikes of Andean amaranth taking root in the glacial till of your central Wisconsin ridge, the Incan purple poking up between the peppers, tomatoes, onion, squash, watering the garden, the sunshine glinting rainbows through the spray, the smell of wet soil, the crazy way you planted anything, anywhere, and it all grew, or mostly anyhow. Thank you.
I admit to being biased, and I prefer poetry, and I think you should read your poetry all the time.
I still consider myself a prose writer, but thank you.
I know, and for as long as I've heard you, I think you're a wonderful poet.
Thank you.
Okay, so after that, how about if we go to Madison, Wisconsin? Rusty Russell, let's hear from you.
Wow, that's a tough act to follow. Did I hear you say that you're in San Miguel de Allende, Nina?
March 1.
Oh, I lived there for 5 years and I'm thinking of going back very soon.
Well, come during March.
I would like to be there forever.
Right.
I don't have any love poems. It seems to me more important that this is the full moon. And this has nothing whatsoever to do with either. Addiction. When there's no place left to go, it's where you go. Another country is so close that you're already there. Your life savings, once converted into this currency, cannot be converted back. So you spend it all here in the casinos that are rigged, so you always win the wrong money. Years pass in a day, and the food takes some getting used to until you no longer remember how to cook without these spices, and you no longer care. Such a cheap vacation. You could always go home tomorrow or tomorrow until this feels like home. Where did the time go? If you do return, you hitchhike, and the border guards don't search your luggage, don't even seem to care your back. The stamp on your passport says regret in another language that you remember every night while you wish that you could sleep. All day, every day, Your hands feel empty. All that Muppet clap, it's so funny to watch. Where I am happy, I know where it is. That lake, the one asleep in a ring of willows and water lilies, the one that takes in all the children who want to lose themselves in water because the loss makes them laugh. They dive and splash, they scream for help they don't need. They say there's a car sunk on the bottom, a Volkswagen, but no one I know has ever touched it. The lake is deep and colder the deeper you go, where the invisible spring that fills it yields the open wound of water always. I know where it is. We would swim to the end, my daughter and I, where the lilies were thick, their fragrance a reminder of days I can't leave. Then swim back to the rock on the bank where we'd climb out and she would jump in and I would follow and we'd swim back again, laughing, and I'd pull her again, laughing, and we stood there dripping water from our lives. We were blessed by the traffic on the road, the pickup trucks on their way home from work, as the water and the years fell away from us. We dove back in. We smiled at each other and we jumped back in. We both know why the water never stops flowing away from the road that leads there. We know, but we can't say. And this is the last, a little longer and different. The maid's story. I'm just a maid in this hotel. But in my country, like most women, I would help prepare the dead for burial. And I know that bodies have their own light that they exhaust in living. Sometimes I think I can see mine leaving me, my own life flowing out of me into the afternoon sunlight that runs past these windows like a river. The days go on without me, familiar noise, like the TV in the back of the room, game shows, prompted applause. It keeps me company in this intimate debris that always makes me feel like a stranger. Someone else's makeup sprawled beneath a mirror, a hairbrush, a dying newspaper, a pillowcase wounded by lipstick. People always leave the water on in the bathroom, mumbling to itself in the sink. Maybe it makes them feel less alone. In my country, the women wash the bodies of the dead, and that water is darkened by death. They say you can't pour it on your garden. It will stop your roses from blooming, and your trees will never bear fruit. I've seen it. The water sinks into the ground, and the dirt isn't even damp. Once, when I was a girl, I helped wash a boy who had drowned in the river. I was young then and terrified of childbirth. I'd heard my mother screaming, begging God for her life when my brothers were born, and I didn't want to go through that. I was holding the sponge, and the women were talking to each other, arguing about someone's husband. They left the room, and I was alone with the body, gray as wet newspaper, water dripping from it. There was no more light there. The sponge was streaming water down my arm. It fell on the dirt floor like dull rain. No one was watching me, and I looked at his empty body, the water dripping, and the earth was dry beneath him. And I remembered my mother screaming, and the blood as my brothers came out of her. The water ran dull down my arm. The sponge was warm as a breast, so I raised it to my lips, and I squeezed the dead water into my mouth. It ran down my chin and fell whispering in the dirt, and it had no taste at all, like it wasn't even wet, and it left me thirsty. I never told anyone, and I never did it again, and I never had children. I remember it sometimes now when I'm alone in these empty rooms, my own life flowing away, and a TV arguing in the shadows behind me. I remember that boy's gray body and the different voices of water here in these dull rooms, all of them lit with no more light than a river carries within itself. Thanks.
Talk about intense poetry. Thank you, Rusty. It was really something. Next up, Sarah Ray.
Hi, thanks everybody. Thank you so much, Alan, Nina, and Bill. And it's so great to be here with Patricia and Luis and with all of you. Boy, that's hard to follow. But I have another poem about water. I'm seeing this like theme through so many of our poems tonight about water. Water's in so much of it. So that's pretty cool, I think. So I'm going to read one, probably two. The first one is called Waves Are Mountains Pushing Us Through Time, after Michael McClure. Water lifts me to my neck, azure water, Caribbean waves rolling, a rainbow in the distance, puffy cumulus clouds around, the rain. Somewhere on the horizon, the rainbow's still here, loved ones coming to greet me. At 62, everything is all right. Matt is here, his smile, his wide laugh, his blue eyes intent, and his grandmother, my mother Dorothy, her bright sunburn, Florence, my aunt, and Thomas too, on Long Island Sound. I am 8. I am riding the waves at age 8 on Long Island Sound. The water not turquoise, not warm, but yes, buoyant, buoyant. The sand in my suit, my skin colored pink like the color in the rainbow, patterns of salt drying on my skin. And now a man ride waves next to me. He could be my Chicago lover. And I am thinking about Aunt Esther and how she followed her lover west, changed her name, left her Indiana life. And Grandma and Grandpa, they never saw the sea, but they are here. The others, the recent ones, my friends, writers and teachers, Gail, Guadalupe, Annie, their exquisite words, not silenced now. They flow through me, they lift me, their books in my soul, in our souls. The water, it plumes up, pushes me toward shore, bubbles in my hair and mouth. I am liquid, I am lifted, I am swirling spray and foam. We are eddies, we are swells, we are currents moving in and reaching out. Each person, each memory, each time, they carry us, they hold us, their salt drying on our skin. Thank you, thanks. All right, you see what I mean about the water going through all of our poems, right? I just have one more, mentioning Grandma and Grandpa in the other poem. And so this is one where I mentioned my Grandma and Grandpa, which is in my chapbook, someplace else, called Their Last Car. And I call it my ode to the Chevy hardtop, the old mid-60s Chevy hardtops, their last car. A mid-60s Chevy Impala, white, used maybe, paid for in cash. Grandpa didn't use credit. It had no air conditioning, so when they came to get us at the Greyhound station, corner of Bussern and 7th on that sweltering August day, all the windows were open. Grandma sat behind Uncle Bill, her black hair bobby-pinned back. Stray wisps plastered her temples, only a strand or two of gray peered through. Late afternoon, smell of road tar and sweat. Cramped from sitting in the bus, we piled our suitcases in, my place the middle hump in the back seat. Grandma's apron squished cool against my sticky thigh. No middle door pillars on those models, no metal frames separating front glass panes from back. Window spaces stretched long, one on either side. Wet air gushed wide over all of us, all at the same time. Thank you.
This is an intense reading. I am loving this. Some days you want a gentle poetry reading, and sometimes you want this, and sometimes you get this. How about next up? I don't want to bring up someone who's really intense, like Carlos. You're just gonna have to. We're gonna have to wait for you, Robbie Nestor.
I'm not doing intense today, so I think we've had some intense. I'm going to start with a Valentine's poem. It's called Home and Beyond, and it was in Swim on February 10th. And it's after Brendan Constantine. From an antique rug beater to a flamingo. We have never met, but I want you to know how much I envy your feathers, pink as a cloud at sunrise, nearly weightless, with their hollow shafts capable of carrying you great distances. For myself, I go nowhere except out into the dusty yard, where the maid channels her resentment by smacking the master's Persian carpet till it yields years of ground-in sand blown in from the beach. I am all knots, woven of bamboo, while you arc in one tapered sweep, your neck and wings, your beak curved as a church key, streamlined and graceful. I stay at home alone and dream, while you travel yearly with extended family, noisy but amiable, through skies of seamless blue, landscapes of cloud, knowing beyond question the exact location of the beach in Tunisia where you were hatched. I would love to ride on your back, tucked between your wings, though I am afraid to lose my job beating the world clean, a task we have great need of in these days. But if you ever wish to come out of the cold and damp, to dry between your toes, I invite you to stand with me by the fire, each of us balancing on one long leg. And here's a strange little piece. It's called Here There Be Dragons. Once, maps ended at the edge of the world. These unknown places spawned unruly spirits, vapors issuing from cracks in the packed earth, magnetic shifts that make a nonsense of the ordinary east and west. These open spaces thrilled us by breaking all the rules. In strange Sedona, where saguaro cactuses the size of trees offer armful of white blossoms to the bees, it's said that energy still gathers beneath the surface, unloosing light shows in the sky, dinosaurs and aliens as documented in a secret archive no one has ever seen. Trace this to Brodmann's area number 9, part of the frontal cortex, responsible for seeing the line of sense into the world, picking constellations out of a star-packed sky. Remember those bright flashes people saw at dusk in downtown Tuscaloosa over the deserted Walmart? The perfect circles burned into a field of broken corn stalks, metal monolith high on some Wyoming ridge. We're looking for traces of the ones who left them. No one on earth could burn a circle quite that perfect. Now hundreds show up on that godforsaken ridge with Geiger counters, magnifying glasses, seeking a clue, just hoping to be transported to some elsewhere more congenial than our world. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Robbie. That was really, really sweet.
Thank you.
Next up, Kevin Shine. You're muted, Kevin. I think you're muted.
How about now?
There you are. There you are.
Oh. There, one challenge. Anyway, Robbie, I love that poem about the flamingos and the rug beater. Fantastic. Well, and good evening, everyone. It's great to be here tonight to share some poetry with each other. And first, hello, Al. Hello, Nina. Thanks very much for setting up these readings. And tonight, I'm going to read two poems from a collection that I'm working on. The first goes back to a feeling I had when I was in grade school. I was sick, and I was upstairs in my bedroom while everything else in the house was going on downstairs, and I was hearing all these noises. And that led to this poem, which is titled "The Sounds of Souls We Love." From an upper room, I hear their muffled noises, footsteps, the clattering of pots and pans, the stirring of a spoon, a cough, the splash of running water, unnoticed until someone turns it off. A boy in bed, I imagine busy souls below. The details of their hands and faces, their shape and size, the way they hold their arms in gestures that appear before my eyes. Nothing separates my soul from theirs. No cares, no thoughts of things I should have said or done to interfere with my perceiving. The thickets of my busy mind have opened on a clearing. I have come to healing night, to where I see by ear more clearly than by sight. With scattered stars above, the night and I are one, united by the sound of souls we love. Thank you. Thank you. My second poem is about trees, a tree, but it's not a Joyce Kilmer type tree. It's more of a street tree. And the title is The Mulberry Tree. I dreamed I was a tree, but not an elm casting shade across a boulevard, nor spruce or fir to frame a winter scene. I didn't dream myself a maple dripping watercolor on a forest floor, neither chestnut, oak, or dappled sycamore. No, I was merely mulberry, back alley tree, frowned upon, braiding golden fingers into chain link fences and sneaking uninvited into privet hedges. Give me a year in any ground beyond a mower's reach. I'll root myself too deep for pulling out by hand. A mattock or a shovel would do for another year or so, but let me go for 4 or 5. You'll need a chainsaw and a crew. Full grown, I top the ranks of nuisance trees. My fibrous branches make a poor excuse for firewood or planks. My roots will crack your neighbor's water main. Turn around, I'll be straining at your power lines. All summer, sidewalks wear my berries like a bad complexion. Walk the lawn below my musky shade, You'll track out purple everywhere you go. And yet, your children climb my low-forked trunk with ease. My spreading boughs can be a row of bleacher seats. My overhanging limbs, a stairway to a rooftop envied from below. My berries bring the birds, thrushes, robins, thrashes, orioles, a flock of flaming drunks attracted to an open bottle, beating wings and tails against my glossy green. Awake, I live by plans and promises, hiding who I am among the better trees. But in my deepest sleep, I am mulberry, not to beauty born. Beauty comes to me. Thank you. Just one last thing I wanted to mention, that I'd like to give a big shout out to Mary Dale Stewart, a Spring Valley poet who is on the live stream right now and whose encouragement and support has been so important in my growth as a poet. So big shout out to you, Mary Dale, and back to you, Alan, Nina.
All right. So before we go to whoever's going to be next, it's probably a good time for a commercial. We like to pay our poets. It's a crazy idea, but it seemed like a good one when we were in person and could pass a hat. It's still a good idea, but you have to work a little harder to be able to do it. So the donation link, are you just adding it again, Al?
I'm typing it now, and I will in a second be typing it into the YouTube stream.
Okay, so this is your big chance, although you could do it after the show tonight if you'd like to, but it's only a pittance compared to what they're worth, but whatever you can offer. And in some ways, this is an old home night. And for me, and I'm just having all kinds of memories of people we don't get to see in person too much anymore. And I'm thinking about Carlos Kumpian and Marcha Brasso Press and those days. But let's hear some of his poetry. Carlos.
Well, thank you. All right. I like the fact that we are operating this whole thing under the big full moon energy. So that's like something special. And intensity, yeah, that I have to say, Nina and Alberto, you picked a good night for this thing. I just turned out that way. So let's go. The Critic. The malcontent, born and raised in Egypt, his middle-aged skin smelled of good spice soap, while his words made himself angry enough to cry, burning tears that dug furrows in his cheeks, yet each drop as white as chlorine ice. When he cleared his throat after his bout of rage, he sipped dark clove star coffee that stained his book's opening page, Arabian wine, the hook of the Protestant, the coffeehouse king. He worked on a cushion in socks, wore loose pantaloons, wrapped his head in jute-woven mudcloth and his neck twice in silk scarves. His days shaped the task he bent his back over, an old writing table, under the pre-dawn lights of Cairo that never slept. A drawer was where he kept his finest pen and paper, the treasures of his travel to Rome, where he met his wife. Peaches was his sweet name for his blonde who had expertise in wines. Fridays he brought her flowers and a fresh baguette and whispered a shortened French phrase in her pink ear. Tu prends le petit déj avec moi? You want to have breakfast with me? After 11, he went to the park, found his croquet partner, and they managed to build up a sweat in the spring heat. And he lost a modest bet. It cost him a bundle of grapes. and his pal carried it off in his bicycle's basket. Returning home, the writer stopped at Le Boutique de Tabac, where he restocked his husky pale packs of Goa and Jetan, and he took that late lunch of sliced crusty bread and sardine, topped off with Moroccan olive oil and salt, a sprig of basil growing in the window pot, which he added to his meal while he sheathed his parched throat with water and lemon juice. Once secure in his domestic solitude, he used his antique lighter, an American relic from World War II. He lit 2 evening candles, their lambency bent in time with the local mosque's megaphone Maghrib call to prayer. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. A moment later, he opened his unfinished book, which each season pulled him back when he criticized his life with a crooked rope. All right, that's the first one. All right, let's have a little bit more love in the world here. Above drudgery for Cynthia. To be Aphrodite today must be confusing. No one knows a real goddess when they see one, and no one has the paunch of patient concern anymore. Flat bellies are nothing. Oh, archangel of desire, I keep my shirt on while your apricot mouth castigates a whole generation. Your conch shell ears offer evidence amid the grimace of ordinary faces. Your old boyfriend, Cyclops, read the paper, his sunglasses the size of cymbals. Your damp deity body lays on a used towel while my eyes dehydrate from following you like a gladiator in the desert. All right.
Wow, thank you.
I'm going to do one last real short one for all the poets and all the editors. This is my love poem for you all. The Lord is my editor. I shall not wander in streams of consciousness. He checks my grammar, syntax, and ellipses. He proofs and types to keep me at ease. He reissues good copy, out-of-print books and articles. He is my sole distributor. Gracias. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Carlo.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you from all the editors out there.
Yeah,
Appreciate
you guys do it.
Appreciate. Well, you're one too. So, all right. I think we have 2 left in our open mic. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Shelly Nation, you're next.
So I apologize in advance, Nina, because my poem is called 100 Lashes.
And that would bother me because
I don't know, you were talking about all of the very heavy stuff. So I have been writing about my family history over the last 2 years. Those who have heard the one poem of The Hanging, which was from my 4th great grandfather, that grandfather was hung for this incident, and the other grandfather got 100 lashes. And so this gives a little backstory for all of that. But this is called 100 Lashes. Arms tied together in front, each forearm hovering over the plank, my shirt in my mother's arms, her face wet with tears, sobbing for pain yet to be delivered. The first lash, lacerations creating maps along my back, moist with sweat, or is that blood? My mind stealing through memories, writing a torrent of emotions, 10 lashes. I am sitting in a pew, in a courthouse, longhouse, earthen floor, instructions painted on the walls telling us where to sit. listening to statements from both sides. Archilla Smith on trial for his life, 20 lashes. Isaac Bushyhead, the prosecutor, Stan Wadey, the defendant, us knowing this was all a setup, knowing this is another way to make the treaty party pay. It took all of my strength to stay silent, 30 lashes. McIntosh rode into the Muskogee camp, Archilla inside visiting, horses knocked together, McIntosh's attempt at theft, Archilla's anger erupting to dance along the fire's flames. McIntosh charged, Archilla stabbed, McIntosh punched him in the face, then fleeing, dying moments later, 40 lashes. One witness to the stabbing, first trial, no verdict, second trial, conviction, and we knew there was no turning back. The war that was already rampant just blew up in our faces. They were taking us out one by one. The West would be next. We were forced to play our part. Cold water drenches my face, forcing me awake. 50 lashes. My mind is now at the elections. Pistols packed, clubs attached, Bowie knife in my belt. 5 or so of us heading out to the counting. Isaac and the others packing up the ballots. We approach them on the street, 60 lashes. I see my brother grab Isaac, stab him with his knife over and over and over again. I focus on the breathing, the in and out of his life, blood spewing. My father grabs David Van, others jump in with clubs, pulling David off his horse, dragging him onto the ground, dirt flying into the air. 70 lashes. I see myself in a dream, jumping Elijah Hicks, beating him with fists rumored to be lethal weapons, until Ross's men pull me off, 80 lashes. My mind switches to my father's body swinging, hanging for a murder he did not commit. I focus on his movement, swirling in a circle, 90 lashes. Of words clashing through fists, of constant anger, of retribution for Archilla Smith, of dizziness as I begin to slump, 100 lashes. And I slump, blood running, open wounds, peeling flesh, a sense of loss from a consciousness better left in another world. I am feeling my spirit dissolve.
Wow.
Happy family.
Yeah, right. Happy. All right. Are you going to give us another one, or is that enough?
I could end with a love poem, an old love poem. just have a better taste in our mouth. So I know, Nina, I remember you hearing this a long time ago at Molly's, so it's fitting. I have told you that I love you 1,000 times in my mind. You have seen yourself in my eyes while awake, narcissistic awareness, have dreamed of dark pupils, swam in them, and drowned, floated through serenity, my own heart stopping for half a second. I have told you that I have missed you 1,000 times in my mind. You have nestled yourself between my thighs and kissed my leg, erotic poses. Have dreamed of snow white flesh, built an igloo of desires, folded yourself in poetry and friends for warmth, heart weighing heavy on love lost. I have told you that I need you 1,000 times in my mind. You have shaken under my body, succumbed to heavy pressure, a final release. Have dreamed of massive boulders crushing your frame, rocks flowing through fingernails, air escaping from lips, pressure belonging to no one. I have told you that I want you 1,000 times in my mind. You have fallen through crevices between mountaintops, been doused with water from spirits flowing, wet embrace. Have dreamed of angels lifting you through clouds of fire, aspire to become one with yourself, continuous knowledge waiting to be with me. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
All right, then. I don't have any more choices about who to have read next, but we can't end this this open mic without Mike Buchan. So thanks for being here and making it a old home night.
It's old home night and it's a fabulous night too. Great work today. Great stuff. So I'm going to read one poem. Mary read a Valentine's Day poem. So I'm going to read one in that theme. It's called Abundance. This trembling, electrified, off-phase abundance. These broken amens, these streets purged, fire-bent, and unquenched. Here among the neophytes and the novices is you, M, thirsty for experience, for your chance to sing Too Hot to Handle out loud all the way on the bus ride home. Here is your old Romanian poet, uncertain songbird, stale cornbread minus 4%. The markets crash, the funds collapse, and still the beast adores you. The beast has always adored you. My mind searches for miracles, but the miracles disappear. They scamper away like salamanders in the sun. They fall apart, then reassemble themselves in your arms. Ancient home, ancient tree colors blazing through Chicago. M, are you listening? Reach into the future. No ambiguity, no suffering need be lost. Here in this waiting place, in this capsized boat painted with roses, pull me into the future, M. Then, and then, and then.
Thank you, Mike. That was a nice way to end the open mic. Thank you to all of our open micers. That was just, these are too many great poets to, this is not just an open mic. So we really appreciate everyone being here. And now I'm going to hand off to Nina. She'll introduce our features today.
All right. We're going to start with Patricia Spears-Jones, and then we're going to have Luis Rodriguez. And after that, we're going to have a conversation with them. So stick around for all of it. I met Patricia for the first time at the Hot House, who all of you Chicagoans probably know. And who knows what was going on that night, whether it was poetry or world music or what it was, but it was a great place for good people to meet. I'm so glad that we did. Patricia's a poet, a writer, cultural activist, and recipient of the 2017 Jackson Poetry Prize and awards from the NEA and the Foundation for Contemporary Arts. Author of A Lucent Fire, New and Selected Poems, and 9 other poetry publications, of which I have a small space on my bookshelf devoted to them. And upcoming, The Beloved Community from Copper Canyon Press, which will be out when?
Fall 2023.
All right, we'll be here. And plays commissioned by Mabu Mines. She edited Think Poems for Aretha Franklin's Inauguration Day hat and Ordinary Women, an anthology of poetry by New York City women. She's an emeritus fellow for the Black Earth Institute and organizer of the American Poets Congress. Patricia, I'm so glad to have you with us tonight. I really am.
Well, thank you. It's very strange to be here on Valentine's Day. Usually I just am watching endless movies and drinking wine that I don't need to be drinking. Anyway, it was a very intense open reading, open mic. A lot of really amazing work is being done everywhere in this country. So I'm going to start with a very strange poem called Valentine's Day, 2001. And this was published in Painkiller. Thank you, Luis, for publishing this book. And also for putting the type in so I could read it. Anyway, so, I mean, I don't have super connections to Chicago, but Nina got me to the Woman Made Gallery for that wonderful reading we did during AWP and some other things. It was just great. And two of my best friends, Debbie Wood and Angela Jackson, live there. So this is really a treat. I'm sure they're not watching this because I think Angela's like, I don't want to deal with any more poems. I'm tired. Being a poet laureate. Anyway, here we go. Valentine's Day, 2001. And I'm sure most of you guys know who the Falun Gong group is from China. And this is set, of course, in New York City. Oddly enough, she'd finished eating, and can you hear me? Okay. Oddly enough, she'd finished eating the wildebeest. It took all night. Former lovers cursed her shoes. All other dreams came true. Fire and spit, roasting the beast, heat not enough. White, hairy belly subway morning, everybody hot. Chinese government fakes the immolation of martyrs. Falun Gong members hand out flyers. Wind harsh, snow not much. Hairy belly subway morning, he's addicted to display. Her mouth is wet with half-cooked beast. Her mouth is wet with hair. Her mouth is licking white hairy belly subway morning. Air is snow. Free Tibet banners slung along 2nd Avenue. Falun Gong members hand out flyers. She dreams a feast, and then the flat-bellied man appears. Subway morning, her bloody mouth, the wildebeest. Fire and spit. Who is free? She? Plump red valentines dangle Grand Central. Huge bouquets in big metal buckets stand ready for plucking. Mouths bloody, hot meat, hairy belly, white subway morning, work. Morning ride, Grand Central orifices enclose and release. Woman satisfied. Falun Gong hands out flyers. Chinese government fakes martyrs' deaths. Fire in the Valentine. Plump, red, restless. Bloody mouths. Air is snow. Street is ice. Radiant curbside. The beast growls. All right. After Hell is my golden shovel. Seeing as how this is, from Chicago, and it's from the title to the sonnet, My dreams, my works must wait till after hell. You can trace my bitter words, my words and yours. Who knows how our dreams will turn out? Will they turn out? My days, like snakes, are slow moving cold. Works in the docket, love in my pocket. I must situate my situation. Now I have to wait for shimmer to shake me down. Yes, till the very tears I fought for dry up, and after them, all is paradise after this frigid hell. And I am a great enthusiast for Gwendolyn Brooks's sonnets. Those are some of the most amazing pieces ever. Now, I love mistakes and errors and communication, because then you wind up coming up with a new poem. The wonderful poet Marineska Carey sent me a note about something and said, "Wait a minute, I think I sent you the wrong thing." And I said, "Oh, that's a mistake." Excuse me. I live in the land of radiator heat, which means I live in the land of dry. A Carey's mistake. The poem has nothing to do with it. What if he says, "Your star"? What if he says, "You're so star warm"? Meaning you're celestial, heated, but isn't it cold where the bright stars radiate? In that core of the blackest hole, as energy folds upon itself, defiant? So that unexpected phrase stelt, the heart, mother fox protecting her kids, the den warm, but for how long? And who is watching her breathe? If you bring joy and then reel it back, as if you've made a mistake, then what are you doing? Is there love in the cosmos? Was there ever? All right, so way back when I was a youngin', that's 1,000 years ago, literally, I wrote a series of sonnets, and this is sonnet 3. This is one of the best sonnets about being in love that I know. All right. Dime falls, your voice rises fevered. It's king the way the wind whips this garbage up and around like a father swinging his baby. We are holding hands and yes, giggling. No force can stop us now. We are singing all the James Brown songs we know, helpless, off key, but exhilarated. Columbus Avenue breakdown, how the puddles in the sidewalks radiate splendor, glass. Broken against high-rise buildings beckon. We are hungry, the shifting children salsa, and you may be our feast. Please linger. You offer me your laughter. I take the sweat from your cheeks and hum. And then I have to read this because this is everybody, probably everybody on this on the Zoom has written at least one great date poem. Can I get a witness? So here is my one great date poem. There are some other ones, and I'm not writing about the bad ones because they're too funny. They should be a movie. I think they were. Anyway, Son Cubano, and all the musicians know that Son Cubano is the Cuban air. It is a specific string. Son Cubano, and also the name of a restaurant. We are the genesis of a bolero. Eyes, lips, thick, kinky dreads, beds, cars, stars. A singer's words curve through memory and shadow. Rhythm stumble and stop. Come again, the night air, a willing audience. Men huddle near a long brass bar rail, shoes gleaming, lips smiling, eyes lit, as women, young and old, stroll past them on their way to the powder room. Las Mujeres motion a dream of sand and waves, a Cuba that only the restaurant owner and his waiters may have truly seen, heard. Late winter, rain slicking the streets of lower Manhattan. Son Cubano's portals reveal a theater of nostalgia, the scent of Havana scripts so well. And we play along. Mouths flavored with rum, lime, sugar, our tongues playing the kisses stolen game as the song phrases of fierce sadness promised in the wake of lust, mercurial ascent. We flee these orchestrated memories, our hands in each other, our mouths hungry for each other. Our song is bluer, harsher, North American. The rhythm's African, yes, as dearly measured in drama and depth. Our exile is internal. There is little longing for the good old days when Havana was a mean place for dark people, but a real fascination for these songs and their makers. Your arms cascade a trumpet solo, the piano's harmonics thrill my back. My lips are waiting for yours. This is our bolero, accidental, lovemaking, Friday night, New York City. Everybody's exotic. Everybody's from the South. And here's some of the poems that I think will be in the beloved community. You send in a manuscript, you never know what's going to come out on the other side. But so far, this you'll notice probably by now that I have a thing about here's my fake epigram. All my real love interests are dead. They are artists and Latino and dead, not an epigram. I made that up. Okay, and so this is dedicated to Elio Hotisica, the great Brazilian artist who I never met, of course. And on top of that was Gabe. I don't care. You can make shit up, which I do all the time. Oh, that Brazilian guy. I love writing this poem. It was so much fun. Did I ever see Elio walking some part East Village, curly-headed and densely packed with art and drugs and death's constant shadow? Was he on the corner of Avenue B and 10th Street drinking beer and ogling the pretty Puerto Rican girls? Was he ogling me? Or was he living in an abandoned warehouse, holding on to his pencil, pen, brush on paper, cardboard, found trash, or garments, district fabric, offloaded by a gang out of the projects, whisking splatter of heroin, lost income, dropped dangling from a cup of bitches brew? Oh, how to speculate this mad Hendrix-loving artist movement in El Barrio. Louis Sider, or was he uptown, Spanish Harlem, or on the west side, Greenwich Village, hanging with the drag queens early a.m., everybody tired from the bars, the piers, the crumbling edifices, circa late 60s, early 70s, Nueva York. He was on a wild ride, the weed, his stash, the dazzled dreams of men who had survived torture, military repression, a bad economy, yet learned to take acid trips one day at a time. Oh, the love affairs we have with the myth of the what ifs and that drug paraphernalia. Oh, night seeker, ill-named, moon winds your direction home. Thus created the mixed up third whirl, loud music, your lips dry from screaming in January wind, something mighty Hendrix, sun lack, out on back, meant for mapping midday heat, exhausted. Thus, the making of a hammock, a thing of beauty, backlit by the gallerist, while duct tape coiled the rafters of some street legal post, fly fishing flies, pretended bait, tight pants dropped here and there, as thriving masquerade of the handsome Brazilian who could have been the best bad news boyfriend ever. I really did have fun writing that. I wish I had met him because I love his art. Anyway, Seraphim. This is the first poem of mine that ever got into the New Yorker, and I'm very happy that it did. Right. Seraphim. Also, everybody knows that this is based on a Wim Wenders movie, so I'm not going into any more of that. Seraphim. Once a beauty, full-figured, beloved, and then a fever, sweats, water vomited until the body gave out, and then wings and lyres and legion of other angels, singing, dancing, flying about. But once a beauty remembers physical love, and then it's lost. Eternal life seems mundane, no conflict or need or desire. Thus, this seraphim held melancholy, gentle as a lull in a long conversation. But heaven allows only jubilance. Possibly the angel needed to return human with feelings, tears, and laughter, or find a way to shape the sadness into a moment of beauty when the angel's wings spreads and flight moves to breathing full of vision. Then the angel's tears bond with the visitor's fear, awe. It could be a filmmaker's perambulating Berlin in search of a reason to consider the spirit those angels set on top of monuments across the handsome city, and they love the lovers. Then one remains lovingly disinterested. How dreams and death and a dearth of joy is visible. And wings spread and wings fall, and the beloved becomes a man who understands a woman's full figure, a man who fears fever, a man who takes his lover in all her melancholy and lifts her up and unto joy. And just a couple more. To go back into my new and selected, now old and selected. Nina, this is so wonderful. Thank you so much for making me have to do something on an actual, day of.
Unbelievable that I could get you in here because you
I have nothing else to do. I'm just a retired lady, what can I tell you? My life is very boring. Ha ha ha. Not really, but
I don't think so.
Nah, well, I try to, I've been trying to make it boring, but it doesn't seem to. Oh, 44. I wrote this down. You should just, here you go. Why is it? Oh, Borges dream. Like everybody of a certain age, I was enamored of Borges. And well, I had a dream. Borges dream, 4:35 a.m. I dreamt Borges lived in Norway. I know he's from Buenos Aires. I know he's Argentinian, but in my dream, he lives in Norway near a fjord. He built a library near a fjord. People come to visit the town. They come to see the fjord. They come to visit the library. When they see the fjord, they gasp. When they search for the library, they find mist. Borges is fond of eating ferocious salmon and fierce rice. Wine is served from heavy pewter pitchers. If lucky, visitors to the library are told tales of delicate heroism and gentle rivalry. Borges enjoys the green of short summers and the whites of long winters. On occasion, books sway to a bandillon's pulsations. At night, all the keys are noisily put away. And just two more. So somebody wrote about Thanksgiving. Here's my Thanksgiving poem. And this is also a poem about marriage, and it's for my friends Lynn and Richard, who've been long married. And I made their toast at their wedding. Thanksgiving, Boston, 2013. Half moon growing into full. Young men circle the square of concrete. Words pinging the air. Half moon growing into full. In a friend's house, the books and paintings harmonize a life of comfort, full furnished, marriage in all its abundant contradictions. Intimacy and acceptance, a door that may be shut when needed. Ornaments of sharing, cups, plates, wine glasses, good beer, and better whiskey. Whereas the light falters in the underground, men walk tracks with head lamps at full blast. Danger abides, danger abides. And so the tabloids print the face of a child murderer or the Pope. Anxiety abides, anxiety abides. And then doves are released, Brooklyn's lungs exhaling. A father's weeping farewell brings us their watchful generosity, the beauty of their chatter, the matter of their charity. We have what we have, and each of us has lost someone dear, a child, a parent, a friend, a lover. Over decades of growing into fullness, our years become that precarious blossom that falls onto earth and decays. And the last poem, which I just got published like 3 months ago in Plume, it was hilarious. So, okay, way back in the day, way back in the day, I had a good friend, his name was John Howell, and he was kind of thought of himself as a literature person. And he was the person that introduced me to the stories of Julio Cortázar, right? And of course, I had seen Last Tango in Paris, way too young to have seen Last Tango in Paris, but you know, I'm not like my friends who saw like Midnight Cowboy when they were in high school, you know. Anyway, so here's, of course, I've been in love with Mr. Cortázar ever since, and here's my poem. Reading Julio Cortázar after turning 70. Years ago, there was your story about a man named John Howell. John Howell, the one I knew, read this story knowing that there was no way that Cortázar had heard of him, and so he knew he was not inspiring. Thus, an Anglo-named protagonist slumps into invisibility. Jumbled jazz steps mocking robust gargoyles seen by earnest youth. The crosses born in old books are dropped here. There in dreams fit for surrealists on holiday. What if the spire was a foil as in fencing, bird a drum as in microtones, and the driven snow is cleverly disguised as salt? Can I call you Julio? Would you allow me to conjure your handsome face in the bowl of my two hands? Warping demons of vague collapses eroticize the hemisphere of New World imagination, the New World's middeeds fraught along the lines of cocaine in the mansion near the Tour Eiffel. Exile is always a bitch. Tart walking boulevards, scarred but steady, somehow refusing to give in to the give up. El Maestro strokes one letter after the other, dangerous tempo, like the tango, wrapped in rules demanding rupture. Barrels flare fires on the Bowery, where winos sing a policeman shuffle. It's the 1970s, and Paris is in the distance, and Buenos Aires is floating. Cloud City, home of generals, divas, balladeers flung against prison walls. In that earlier book, is there poetry in it? The auteur leaves for the continent, and it is not Africa. Julio, your acquaintance with the fantastic, the heart too heavy to share, takes a parallel road, the one where the writers are thrilling, handsome movie star ready, but that is the illusory traverse, the floating countryside. Where is your jazz lair? The white cat in his white hat, shimmering horn, the jazz lyre, levity in the soulless smoke, a miserly tease, heart beating and night vision eyes. Hooves across cobblestones, the marais tender, crying for the dark-eyed woman's plaintive song, like North America, sustained with tobacco and lies. Thank you so very much.
Well, what a pleasure. What a pleasure. Thank you so much. And all of the connections that you make between these artists and filmmakers and poets and all of that are just so rich in your work. And I just feel like I've got a finger, or you've got a finger on the pulse of the broadest universe of creativity, and then you bring it to us.
Thank you. I'm an Aquarius. What do you want from me? I want it all.
The water theme of the evening.
Well, I'm not a water person. I'm an air person. So.
All right. But wait a minute. Is Aquarius water?
It's an air sign, darling. It's an air sign.
I just think of having an aquarium and whatever.
Well, see.
I got distracted because apparently my niece just went into the hospital to have her first baby. So she's right around the corner from you.
Well, another.
Well, yeah, one child born to carry on, to carry on, to carry on. So on to the business at hand. Luis, it's so nice to have you here tonight. Luis Rodriguez has 16 multi-genre books, including the best-selling memoir, Always Running, and its sequel, It Calls You Back. He has read poetry throughout the United States, as well as Canada, Mexico, Central America, South America, that it keeps going on. So he's a founding editor of Tia Chucha Press, as well as co-founder with his wife Trini, who's somewhere back there, he tells us, of San Fernando Valley's Tia Chucha Centro Cultural and Bookstore. From 2014 to 2016, he served as Los Angeles's poet laureate, and he just might be our next mayor of LA or governor of California.
I'm running for governor. I'm running for governor.
Coming to whatever.
The poet governor.
Right, we need one of them. His last poetry book is Borrowed Bones, Luis Rodriguez.
Nina, I got to say something about Luis. Let me just say that. I'm jumping in. Luis, look. Damas y caballeros, ladies and gentlemen, Luis Rodriguez, if you knew his trajectory, you would be amazed. This is a man who really, genuinely, I'm talking as a teacher of 25 years working with at-risk youth in Chicago. I'm telling you, Luis Rodriguez is a phenomenon because he represents, for me as a Chicano, he represents a profound development, a servant of our community, someone who cares and sacrificed his energy for us. Thank you, Luis. Gracias, carnal.
Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you. I didn't expect that, Carlos.
I was so glad that you did that. So yes, thank you. That's probably the way you should have been introduced.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm not going to talk the governor stuff right now, but I do want to say how important it is that our voices get heard and that we create spaces for these voices in all arenas. And people have actually asked me, why would you run for governor? Why would you use electoral arena? It's so inept, it's so corrupt. And I go, because I don't turn over nothing to the corporations or to the white supremacists or whoever may be there. I'm taking over whatever I can. And that includes the spaces in poetry and literature and everything else. We have to fight for every one of these spaces, but we fight for them not for us, but for others, so that others can also have access. So to me, one of the things that my wife Trini always points out is poverty is got all kinds of levels, but one of them is the poverty of access. You know, and that's one thing that I fought for. And I'm really glad we have some DeGenova Press poets here. Patricia, thank you so much. Your poetry is amazing, powerful, your voice, so important. And by the way, my computer's getting a little weird right now. Hold on one second. All right, here I am. Okay. And then of course we published Carlos and Mary and Mike. So it's great, but also others. Chicago was the home of DeGenova Press. We've now been at it for over 30 years. I don't even know, 33 years now. It's been going, and we're still going. And we got this great, beautiful center you're invited to, DeGenova Center Cultural and Bookstore. We just moved into a better space, bigger space. So much is going on. So let me start with a poem that I want to share. This is a love poem to Trini. I will end with a love poem to Trini because it is Valentine's Day. And it just goes like this. By the way, me and Trini were challenged to write love poems to each other. And we did that for a reading series. And she wrote some for me and I wrote some for her. So I'm going to read you this one and another one later from that series that we did a few years ago. So this goes like this. This love is not what you think love is. This love is not to be messed with, misunderstood, or underestimated. This love is not a stairway or a feather or a lingering doubt. This love is oatmeal breakfasts, walks with our dog, holding hands in the mall, kissing every time as if it were our first, opening the doors to our visiting sons. This love is her laughing at my unfunny jest and me floored by her clever ones. This love is admiring the way our brains work, our hearts feel, our skin responds, how our tones ignite a pulsing breath from a longing depth. This love is respect squared, dignity shared, a steel railing over rustic steps, a drive alcove when it rains. It's an internal locomotive of caring, what rustling a tranquil breeze unleashes, the way sunbeam flickers on a rushing stream. This love is afternoon rospadas, whispers in the park, Ferris wheel rides, a stroll in a darkened museum. It's a mad joy screaming binge, intoxicated with auras of faces when we're not there, and how teardrops rip open the heart's flesh when we are. This love cannot be colorized, hung out to dry, or pushed off the road. It's not a bookmark, a clock without hands, or the white of your eyes. What you think this love is, it's probably not. So I'm going to read some non-Valentine love poems because there's other loves that I would like to address here tonight. And this one is to my mother. And you might know that my mother was Raramuri, which is one of the largest tribes in northern Mexico. They're called the Tarahumara. You might know about them. They're known as runners. They're famous for their running. They've won marathons. My mother came from that tribal area called the Copper Canyon, but she actually wasn't born there. That's where her family's from. She was born in a ghetto called La Tarahumara. It was just a poor ghetto. And whenever you left, you know, I know people don't know, but the Tarahumaras, when they're in their own terrain, they're some of the healthiest people in the world. They walk for hours. They're great runners. They eat the corn, squash, and beans, the three sisters. They are just, they're poor as all get out, but they make the most of what they have. They're one of the few cave dwellers in the world. They still live in caves. And, but once you leave that, you become one of the most unhealthiest people. As soon as they become civilized, they become alcoholics, diabetics, They get heart disease, they get obese, all kinds of things. So my mom was actually born in that ghetto called La Tarahumara in Chihuahua City, and she grew up there, and then she ended up in Ciudad Juarez. And by the time that I was born, my mom was a very sickly woman. She was sickly for most of her life. She had diabetes, she had thyroid problems, she was very obese, she had lost all her teeth in her 20s. And she was just in pretty bad shape. And she was always she ended up getting lymphoma, all kinds of things. So this poem has to do though with one of my earliest memories as a kid. And we moved to Watts when I was 2 years old from Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. And Watts was my first community. And what I loved about the Rams Bengals game was the halftime, because the halftime was actually honoring a lot of the West Coast stuff. And they had those lowrider cars, and I wish they were bouncing. That would have been better if they could make them bounce. That would have been the coolest thing. But they were honoring Compton and Watts, and those were my communities that I first started, and in my 20s came back to. I came back to South LA and stuff. So this poem has to do with Watts, but it has to do with my mom, my earliest memory. It's a love poem to my mom, but it's also very harrowing and graphic. And it's called Heavy Blue Veins, Watts, 1959. Heavy blue veins streak across my mother's legs. Some of them bunched up into dark lumps at her ankles. Mama periodically bleeds them to relieve the pain. She carefully cuts the engorged veins with a razor and drains them into a porcelain-like metal pail called a tina. I'm small, and all I remember are dreams of blood, me drowning in a red sea, blood on sheets on the walls, splashing against the white pail and streams out of my mother's ankle. But they aren't dreams. It is Mama bleeding into day, into night. Bleeding a birth of memory, my mother, my blood, by the side of the bed, me on the covers, and her slicing into a black vein and filling the pail into some dark, forbidding red nightmare, which never stops coming, never stops pouring, this memory of Mama and blood and Watts. I find reaching out to my indigenous roots very important, and I just got a message today that I've been given the medal from the Rupert Costo Medal in American Indian Affairs. They just sent me the notice that I'm getting a medal from this, because I have been working with Indian kids in this country, but also in Mexico, Central America, and South America. And that's part of the work that I do. I have another love poem, and this is fairly easy to do these love poems because I love so many things. And so this one though is to my two youngest sons. I have 4 kids. My oldest kids are 47 and 45. And my oldest son is a grandfather, so they're up there. But my 2 youngest boys are, I'm trying to remember, 33 and 28, something like that. Anyway, this is my poem to my youngest boys with my wife, Trini, because my first 2 kids from my first wife, this is the kids from my wife, Trini. And their name is Ruben and Luis, and it's called Moonlight to Water. Ruben recalled the day I brought Mama and his baby brother home when he was 6. In the back seat of the car, he said, was an Asian-looking child, hair sticking straight up on his head. Chito, short for Luisito, looked this way because he's part Raramuri and Huichol, but mostly all universe. Ruben must have wondered about the galaxy of stars, bird songs, and stories that had been dreamt to fashion such a boy. When Chito arrived, I'm sure Ruben knew his world would never be the same. Until then, Ruben had been our only child. To Mom and Dad, he was the screech of car brakes, a sigh to a bad joke, the glove to our ball, and now this, a bewildered boy gazing at a sweet-faced earth child wrapped in a light blue blanket. I asked Ruben what he thought about his brother. Eyes gleaming with a 6-year-old's clarity, he answered, "Oh, I already knew him. I saw Chito when I was in Mama's stomach. I gave Ruben a look I often offered in reply to his amazing observations. Somehow, though, the statement rang true. His younger brother was in the wings, preparing to part, the next one patiently abiding his turn. As they grew older, Chito followed his brother's every move, entering wide-eyed into Ruben's dense sphere, sharing the same music, games, imaginings. Ruben never hurt or exploited him, as older brothers often do. The boys connected from the start, brothers since the womb, like hummingbird to flower, like breath to poems, like moonlight to water. So I'm thinking about this poem I'm gonna read next. It's kind of a love poem, but it's a strange love poem. I don't, people know I was on heroin for 7 years as a teen. Then I drank for 20 years. And this year marks 29 years of sobriety. So it's been quite a road, quite a journey. And you all know about this stuff, you know how hard that is. But I hardly ever write about my heroin use. I think I mentioned it in Always Winning and maybe somewhere here and there. I got a couple poems, but not much. I couldn't really find the right language for it for the longest time. And now I have a poem that I hope covers some of that. So it is a love poem. Maybe it's a love poem to life. Maybe it's a love poem to sobriety. But it's called The Peace of Death in Life. And Patricia mentioned this great Bitches Brew. She mentioned Miles Davis's album. It's in the poem. So it goes like this. Heroin's soundtrack, Bitches Brew. Trumpets like trains squealing around a bend. The way rainwater murmurs along a concrete river. Skulls whispering you to sleep. Pain awash and grows from the tip of the toes through legs streaming through the pit of his stomach, coloring the whole body in hazy blue wash. Miles knew the chords to blow. I chipped to soften the edge when things got bad. When it did, I didn't want to be around anyone. Stashed among my own edit and score, loitering inside my own high in my own morose pose. Yet Micaela and homie Sharky often joined, even a hyena or two, and strangers, as raindrops fell. I recall the headstones of Evergreen Cemetery, where I leaned back to nod and scribble in torn pieces of papers, poems tracked with collapsed veins. I recall my small garage room with no running water or heat and feeling the peace of death cover me as a white sheet in my collapse. The shadows felt so compelling. Even when I stopped breathing and homeboys forced me up, ice and pits and groin, milk injected to unsing the song. To quit, I had to accept never-ending ache. Numbness only meant demise. Now constant pain is constant reminder, a holy surrender. Life is pain, pain is life. When the pain's gone, so am I. Thank you, thank you. I have a love poem I want to write to. Mike Pucon reminded me about Spoon Jackson. He was one of my students in the prison. I did prison work for 40 years. Mostly I went in there to do one-time readings, lectures, and or healing circles, but for years I did creative writing classes in prisons. And so I don't do it anymore. I stopped when the pandemic happened. And even though supposedly they're bringing it back in, I don't trust the prison system. I just don't trust that they're healthy. I don't trust it's right. And I'm not going to go back, and maybe just on special occasions. But I want to write a poem. Read a poem that I wrote in honor of the people in my classes. Some of them have been released and now we're in touch and talking. I met a lot of amazing people out of this prison work. 3 of them, unfortunately, recently passed of suicide, which is extremely sad. One of them was my best friend, and he passed a few years ago. I try to help him as best he could from a lot of suicide attempts, and it eventually didn't work. There's a lot of pain that these men and women carry. So I want to read this poem. It's called Make a Poem Cry. It's kind of similar to that Jay-Z song, but this is coming from a line that one of the poets came up with. His name is Jimmy McMillan, who's still incarcerated in the California prison system. And the line goes, I can't see him coming from my eye, so I had to make this poem cry. You can chain the body, the face, the eyes, the way hands move coarsely over cement or deftly on tattooed skin with needle. You can cage the withered membrane, the withered dream, the way razor wire shouts, yells, and batons can wither spirit. But how can you imprison a poem? How can a melody be locked up, locked down? Yes, even cage birds sing. Even grass sprouts through asphalt. Even a flower blooms in a desert. And the gardens of trauma we call the incarcerated also spring with the vitality of a deep thought, an emotion buried beneath the facades, deep as rage, deep as grief, the grief beneath all rages. The blood of such poems, songs, emotions, thoughts, dances are what flow in all art, stages, films, books. The keys to liberation are in the heart, in the mind, behind the cranial sky. The imagination is boundless, the inexhaustible in any imprisoned system. And remember, we are all in some kind of prison. If only the contrived freedoms society professes can flow from such water. Thank you. Before I share the last poem, which is a love poem to Trini, I want to share one to Chicago. I love Chicago. I know many of you are in Chicago, many of you are not, but Chicago is my second home. Even though I've been in LA now for over 20 years, I always go back to Chicago. I visit. I was there earlier this year, got a chance to hang with Carlos and a few other my many friends. I wish I can hang with more people because I go there so quickly. I have a daughter that lives there, grandkids that live there, and great grandkids that live around the area. And so Chicago and Illinois is definitely important for me. And I love Chicago, but I was asked a few years ago when I was in LA, believe it or not, to write a poem to Chicago for the Jane Addams Museum and Jane Addams Hall's museum.
Hull House.
Yeah, Hull House.
Yeah.
There you go. They asked me to write a beautiful poem that they put up and displayed it for a long, long time. And this was done.
That day.
Yeah, it was really a great exercise. It was hard to think about. People write about Chicago all the time, and I know I have echoes of some of those poems, but this is my effort to write about Chicago, and it's called A Hungry Song in the Shadows. When I think about Chicago's first settlers, migrants, job seekers, who sought haven or the hope of one, I think about a place fierce with wails, noises in all disciplines, tongues from all reaches, and how this is not just a city, but a dream state of brick and chain link fences, where poetry clatters along with the L train on iron rails, where tempos hold every belief in street corners, every color, a city that nourishes all palates, holds all thoughts, and still contains the seed of this vital idea. In accord with nature, all is possible. This is a city that's steam built, that muscle and sweat solidified into a church of organized labor, where a swampy onion field in a few generations could become home to the brightest and most jagged skyline, where fossil fuels are holy water and smokestacks and silos remain as soot-stained monuments to industry. From horse-drawn plows to the foulest stockyards, the roar of combustion engines, the clang of metal-tipped tools, and smoke-hurling big rigs screaming along cluttered expressways and upturned streets. I came to the city on my knees, laden with heartaches, bitter in the shadows, seeking 1,000 voices that speak in one voice where still no longer reigns, but where open mics and poetry slams keep the still in our verses, lamenting a life of work in a time of no work, and where the inventive and inspiring could finally burst through the cement viaducts and snowy terrains. Now we are artists or we die. From the fractured neighborhoods where bootblacks and news hawking boys once held sway to this daunting gentrified metropolis of ghosts, toxic waste, and countless poor ripped from their housing projects, 3 flat graystones or trash-lined bungalows, yet nothing can truly uproot it. The energy for what Chicago can become is buried inside people, in callings, passions, technologies, but only if this manufactured garden aligns with real nature, no longer limited, finite, fixed on scarcity, but abundant, cooperative, regenerative, like a song across the lakeshore, blooming with lights, music, dance, banners, and words into a cornucopia of potentials, possibilities, even impossibilities. It's an imagination for the intrinsic beauty and bounty in all things. Chicago, clean, just, free. It's the city we wept and bled to see. So thank you so much. And I'm going to end with another poem to Trini. And this has a hell of a story. I included it in my last memoir. It's a story about, you know, people say when you're trying to recover, you have to reach the bottom. You know, I'm sure you heard that. But, you know, I know a lot of people that have reached the bottom and it doesn't do any good. I have a granddaughter now, which is sad. She's going to be 28 years old in a couple months. She's on crystal meth, and she was on crystal meth and fentanyl for 5 or 6 years. She's now in jail. She's been in jail since November. She's waiting to see whether she's going to go to prison or not. But she's been clean since being in jail, and we hope that it's enough to get the judge to put her in rehab, not prison. We're working at this here in Illinois. They're here in Illinois. But it's kind of sad to see that situation. But as I told her and anybody that asks me, it isn't just getting to the bottom, it's finding grace there. A certain epiphany has to happen. How many bottoms did we get to and never find it? But when you do, that's the combination. So this is one about that, such an epiphany. I used to love going, because I did all the poetry slams. I went to all the poetry events. I know Mary and Carlos and Mike and everybody knows about all this stuff, but I used to love going there, partly because of the poetry, but partly because I love to drink and I love the bars, and that was my favorite thing. Believe it or not, I never had alcohol in the house, but I waited every day, every morning, all day long, working, whatever, waiting for the evenings. I love being in that surrounding. I love the smoke, I love the music, and I love people. And my Trini never really went to any of these bars with me. And one day, after I was struggling with myself about all this, because my son, my oldest son, as you know, got into a lot of trouble. He ended up going to prison for many, many years, but he was in trouble at the time. He needed my help. I had my other son had come along. My daughter, who was also highly troubled, came along. I realized that I wasn't being good to my kids. And then the new baby came, later. And Trini was holding everything together and I wasn't there. And there was just so much going on. So she shows up to this bar where I was at. And she begins to realize how mutated I could become in a bar. A mutated person. I didn't really care. I got loud, I got rowdy. I started flirting with other girls. I didn't really care that she was there. It was really mad and crazy. And she did something that I don't think any woman should ever do, and my wife should never, ever have to do again. She could have thrown something at me, as you know. She could have, walked away, screamed and yelled, maybe gone off with some other guy. Who knows? She did something else. She got on the bar and started dancing. It was an angry dance. But it was something that woke me up. It was as if I sobered up just watching her. And a whole new world became possible. It took me a while, but I soon began my sobriety path. Started going to recovery. And again, in June, the end of June, I will have 29 years sober. So this is my poem to Trini, my love poem to Trini, one of them, and this is the poem to that dance. There is a dance that is like running, a sprint inside a glance, a dance that belongs to Latrini. The body swivels through space and emotions, through dread and sweet hugs, through next morning doubts and wild lips on skin. This dance is surrender, a better douse of memory, also honey shimmering across a night sky. There is a dance called Latrini, perfect steps in an imperfect world. She dances and the world is clay in her hands. She dances and the limbs become liberated and agile. She dances and it's a flight through the mystery of hugs, infused by this particular solace of being held and a strange shame and not knowing how to let go. There is a dance known only to Latrini, a secret song in the folds of a battered self, how in time it becomes nuanced with measured moments, surprising even the dancer. Some days the dance comes to me as a wayward waltz, an unmannered minuet, yet still a sure glide into the arms of a partner in rhyme, a partner synchronized whose unsure footing and missteps finally plummet into line with this love, this woman, this dance named Latrini. Thank you all. What a wonderful reading. Great open mics. Great to see Patricia and hear her voice. You guys were amazing. You guys did a great, great event. I love this. Thank you all. Wish me well, Governor. The poet governor, we'll see. Got an uphill battle, but I seem to like these uphill battles, so I'm on one. Anyway, thank you all. Love you all.
Thank you both, and thank you, everybody. What a sense of love in this collective space. I feel like you and Patricia, you also have both coasts cupped between your arms and your hands, and we've got it all together. Who is this? Is that a grandson? Oh my goodness. Hello, hello, hello. We don't have time for a conversation tonight, but we've heard it all.
I don't know what else we could talk about. I think this has been some of the most honest, real poetry we've had in a long time. Thank you all. This was really great.
You know, we may not be able to get our questions answered tonight, but one way you can get a fuller sense is to buy their books. And I would encourage you to do that. And thank you all for being with us. Louise, Patricia, it's so great to hear both of you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Well, I guess it's till next month. We'll see you all again.